Hi everybody, and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and part 4 of the Asuka 1/35 scale M4A376 wet VVSS late model Sherman with vertical volute suspension, spring suspension. So let's take a look at what I completed up to the end of last video. So last video we got all the upper, we got all the hull done basically, except for details. We got some details on the top, but not all of them. Those are going to come later. So the next part, that concludes step 8. So the next part is step 9, which is the hatches, the driver and co-driver or radio operator's hatch, whichever you want to call it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off 2 G1 periscopes. And those are clear, and the kit comes with 2. There's only 1 on each sprue of whatever letter this, sprue G. So I'm going to cut those off, and I'll show you what I'm going to do. See, the nice thing about the clear sprues, the clear periscopes, is the fact that the armored glass will actually look like armored glass when you're done, and I'll show you how I'm going to accomplish that. So I cut the parts off, get them all cleaned up. Any flash needs to be removed. And I get a piece of Tamiya tape, and I use a straight edge, cut myself a strip. Then I just set this, the width of the lens, I put it down here, just kind of eyeball it. I'm not being real exact or anything. And eyeball the length of the lens. Cut it carefully like that. Pick it up carefully like that. And then, hopefully, I can do this where you can see it. I just lay it on there. Whoops. Get it all positioned. Press it in place, and voila. I have a nice little masked thing. And then I do it on the other side as well. Same thing. Like that. I wonder if anybody makes pre-cut masks like in a big sheet for stuff like this. I'm sure somebody does. As a matter of fact, it'd be a really good, because I do basically the same thing for the cupola, because it is clear as well. I just cut strips, make them a little bit wider, and round off the edges. So if somebody makes those, that'd be really cool. That'd be a good thing, because you could buy a set and have just a junk ton of them on there, and you could buy a set and use it on several different kits. If you build Shermans often, it would work for German vehicles and stuff as well. Or you could just make them like this, like I'm doing. Alright, so here's a few more things I need to detail these hatches up with. Now, the co-driver side, radio operator side, bow machine gunner side, whatever, I don't have to do much extra to it. Other than, for some crazy reason, the hatches don't come with grab handles, okay? For detail up, you make your own grab handle using wire. Now, you could do that, I guess, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use ones from the kit, because I have extras of this very same handle, so I'm going to use these instead of making some. And it's a good thing I have extras, because I'm going to need one more extra for the interior of the hatch, but I'll get to that in a minute. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to install a hinge pin on here. because the kit doesn't have any kind of hinge pin on there. So I just got some round rod like that, and I'm going to put it right on there. Okay, so I'll just take a little bit of cement here and just put a little dab on there like that. It's a big enough drop it won't evaporate too quickly, and then stick it in place and push it down. Voila, hinge pin. Excelente. So for the rest of what I do on this one, I'll be doing on the other one, so I'm not going to talk about it on this one. Okay, so I've got my hinge pin installed on this one. So the next thing I want to do is, on the inside there are some ejector pin marks. So what I did is, for the larger side here, I just used, I cut it off, gave myself a nice clean edge, and gently sanded it off. Then for this one right in here where it's kind of tight, I used a curved hobby knife blade and just gently scraped it. Once you get primer paint on there, you're not going to be able to see it. So the next thing I want to do, while I don't have a bunch of parts on here, is right here. I need to drill that out. I'm assuming it's for a padlock or some kind of locking mechanism. So I want to drill that out with the handy dandy pin vise. This very fragile little drill bit that's wobbling and shaking all over tarnation. Now hopefully whenever I punch through here I won't keep going and, you know, pin vise drill a hole in my finger. That would make me sad. But I've done it before with other parts, so it wouldn't be the first time. Okay, there's that. So blow the dust off, take my hobby knife, scrape the protruding debris from the drilling process out of there. Run it through there again just to make sure it's nice and clean. Maybe even take a little bit of cement and touch that edge up right there so it's not sticking out. Okay, so we got that done. Now the next thing I need to do is, let's see, I think I will do the periscope next because that's pretty substantial. It'll hold pretty well. So I need to make sure I orientate the periscope right. Now you might not be able to see it, but there is, first of all, there's some ejector pin marks I need to deal with. So I'm going to see if they are able to be cleaned this way. Yeah. So I'll scrape these off and come back. Okay, that's all cleaned up. And that's important because this thing's going to be open. So anyway, I don't even know if you can see it in the illustration, but, or in the, on the part, but there's like a little knob right here and a slot underneath, okay? So the slot needs to face towards the inside of the tank. So you know which way to turn. And then you need to make sure that you have there's a hinge on this round disc where it protrudes. And that needs to be at the back, the sloped part of the periscope. So when you get in a position, you need to, what? Oh, apply some cement. Like that. Make sure it's pressed in, get it into position you want. I want mine pretty well vertical, perpendicular to the hatch. Okay, then we're going to let that dry for a minute. All right, the next part I need to glue on is D11, which is this little flap that goes over the top of the periscope. Now, there are two hinge parts there, and then the hinge part in the middle of the cover. So you want to make sure those are lined up in line like a hinge. And it's very tricky because it's very small, very delicate. Okay, there we go. Oh, look at that. I'm probably going to shoot it across the carpet right now. Oh, looky there, see? So let's try that again. Okay, there we go. All right, so it's lined up. Then you want to carefully, ever so carefully touch some cement on there. Let it do its magic. All right. So that, make sure it's pressed down flush on top of the periscope, because that's the way it would be in the real lives. So just make sure it's all nice and lined up. All right, and then just for good measure, put a little bit more cement, but I'm going to do it underneath here just to make sure. Okay, there we go. All right, so that's that. So while I was letting that dry, I cleaned up the handles for the hatch. Now, because these hatches have no provision for a handle other than two little dots to show you where to maybe drill some holes, I need to, since these handles, these particular handles that are the perfect size, since they're actually designed to fit in the holes on a different hatch, I'm going to have to cut the little pins off. So you're not going to be able to see me do it because I'm right-handed and I'm having to do it this way. But what I'm doing is the little pins on the bottom of these hatch handles, I just trimmed them off. Okay, and then comes the tricky part. I'm going to take some cement and touch it to the end of both and hope I can get it in place before it, how do you say, evaporates. And I didn't. So let me try that again. Alright, so let's try this again, shall we? Let's get a little bit more cement on the brush here. That's not quite, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. And the trick is to line it up correctly. And hold it in place for a second. Oh my lord, this one's giving me problems. I just did it on the other one. Holy Toledo. Okay, let's add a little cement on there like that. And like that. Well, la-ti-da, looky there. So, there we go. That's what I wanted. Alright, so I got that. Now I need to cut one off to use for the inside of the hatch, but I'm going to let that dry for a minute. Now I've got the other one already done. The other hatch is already done, so I can actually glue that into place on the thing. But wait, before I do that, I need to put a periscope guard on there, but I think I'm going to put this in place first, put this periscope guard on top of that, okay? I think that'll be a little bit easier for myself. So I'm going to put some cement. I'm just going to put it over here because I don't want it to go flying all around the hatch and like make it look like it's a solid glob of something. Now, some of my more astute observer type watchers may say, hey, wait a minute. I've seen little claspy things that hang off the edge somewhere on the hatch. Well, they weren't on all of them. Now, I don't know if I'm just seeing stuff wrong in my picture book, but for example, I have a photo here in my Sherman in Action that I've had for about, oh, I don't know, 30 years. There is a good photo of two late VVSS tanks. And as you can see, indeed, one of them has the little hasp looking thing on it, but the one right next to it doesn't. And I've noticed that on some other photos as well. Not all of them have those. Another example, here's another one here that does not have it on there. So I don't know if that was like a hit and miss thing or what, but they didn't come with the kit. And I thought, well, maybe it's, you know, just a lacking a detail. But the loader's hatch on the turret actually comes with one on the Photo-Etch fret. So I don't think it was something that was overlooked. I think it was actually intentional. So, but that's just me. All right, so let me find my other handle so I can glue it on the inside of this, and then we'll start thinking about doing the periscope guards. All right, after a bit of contemplation, I decided to go ahead and make a handle out of some copper wire. Now I have this nice long piece of multi-strand copper wire, and this gauge of wire, whatever it is almost, as far as I can tell, it's like exactly the same as that handle there. So that's what I used, and really pretty simple. I just used, well, let me demonstrate. It's easier that way. I have some cutters that I use only for wire and metal and stuff like that. I just cut off a piece of wire, and I guarantee you that piece of wire that I have, I've had it forever, and it's going to last forever. There's a lot of handles that can be made. But anyway, what I did, using this bender, you can also use, you know, you could use your tweezers if you have some that you can really clamp down on, or you can use some needle nose pliers. It doesn't matter. I just happen to have this Photo-Etch bender here, and just put it in there, and then just give it, holding it tight up against the jaw. I push it down to make a nice sharp 90-degree angle, or in this case, you know, 90-something degree. But anyway, you can bend it back out. That's the nice thing about it being so soft. And then do the same thing over here. Now I do it on the outside like this. You know, if you have something that's really narrow, you can kind of gauge and, you know, just make your handle. But in this way, I can kind of control how wide it is. Now in this case, it gives me a measurement here to use. So what I need to do is just monkey around with it, is all I can say. But when you're on the outside like that, you need to go a little bit wider than what you think, because once you bend it, it's going to kind of close that size up a little bit. And then just bend it around like that. If you go a little past, no big deal, because again, it's easy to bend. And there you go. Now see, it's all wonky and crooked. You can just straighten it out. No big thing. And if the legs are crooked, it doesn't matter. You're going to cut those off. So looking at the width, that is just about right. Now obviously, it's not as super sharp as like the one on the plastic would be, but you know, you got to do what you can do. So then once you get that, you need to cut the length, and just kind of figure out the length you're going to cut it, and cut it just a little tiny bit longer. Okay, so in this case, I want the handle to be like that length right there. So I'm going to go just a little teeny tiny bit longer, and I'll show you why in a minute. Just cut it, and you'll find sometimes you'll have like a flat spot where you cut it, so it's like a little bit wider than the actual diameter of the wire. So all I do is I just take this and I clamp it in the jaw here to where the two prongs are sticking out. Then I just take a small sanding stick, you could use a file, and I just go all the way around it, getting off any of that residual smashed cut part, just to make sure it's round. Then once I do that, using a pin vise and wire drill of the appropriate size. Just drill your first hole, and this is just, I just went off what I saw in my references about where the handle actually goes. I'm sure it's kind of close. Drill one hole, but be careful not to go all the way through. One way to do that is just to look, and once you see this start turning white, that means you're getting real close to going through. So then you know to stop. If those have been pushed up a little bit, you can use a knife blade or sander and get it sanded back down smooth, but I don't really think you'll notice it. Then just using the handle, I laid it on there, kind of took a look, and did my other hole. Then, by manipulating these legs, either squeezing them just a little bit or out just a little bit, you'll be able to drop it in there. Then once you do that, you can use some good old super glue and glue those babies in. Like that. All right, and that's all there is to it. With that, that completes the assembly of the hatches. Now I looked, and there was no other detail on the inside of these hatches. I think I mentioned in an earlier segment, but some of them seem to have a strap or kind of a part across the top where you could use a padlock. In looking at photos of the ones that I am using, they don't actually have that in this particular case. So the next thing I want to do now, and this I am not going to install yet because it'll just get broken off. I'm going to wait till I get ready for primer, and then I'll put this in place. So for now, I'll put it in my handy dandy container here, so it'll be ready to go. So the next thing I want to do is these casting symbols here. You can kind of see them. They are very nice, but they're kind of shallow. They seem kind of not pronounced enough. I think I'll wait till after I get some primer on it and then take a look and reevaluate it then. But what I may do is trim those off and use the casting symbols from this, because these seem to be a little more pronounced, and that might make that detail pop a little bit more. But for now, I am ready to move on to, that was step 9. I'm ready to move to step 10, and that's some of the front details. All right, well, upon closer examination, I think I am going to remove these casting details here. I'm not going to redo the cast texture on this because it's pretty good, but I am going to remove these casting marks and use these, and there's 2 reasons why. A, I just think this will look a little bit better because it seems a little more substantial, and B, because I really want to try this stuff out. So that's what I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrape this detail off, but first I'm going to kind of write down what's there so I don't forget, and that way I can make sure I do something similar. So we have, I'm not going to get into what these casting marks are. There's places online where you can find them. Let's see. As a matter of fact, watch this. I'm gonna try something. I'm gonna try some magic. this. I want to make sure I get the pattern correct. It's kind of readable, but not real readable. Alright, so I took a photo of that, and I also wrote down what I'm going to need. So the first thing I want to do is remove this, and I'm going to cut it off using this flat blade. I'm going to try not to mar the cast texture around it. They're real fine, so they come off real easily. Just go like that. And again, this probably really isn't necessary because this detail is pretty good. But I really want to try this, so that's why I'm doing this. And I do think it'll be a little more substantial than just the resin details will be a little more substantial, and time will tell. If it's not, it's not. No harm, no foul. I've just used a new item, and we'll be good to go. So I'm going to continue working on this, get this cleared off, and we'll be ready for the decals. Okay, so here is what I've done. This is ready. The instructions say to cut the decal out. Cut it as close as you can, so you don't have a lot of decal film, but leave a little bit, and that serves as a handle. And then once you have that little bit left, slice through the decal film, not all the way through the backing, but through the decal film. That way you can just slide this right, you can slide the decal right off. Now it also says to use warm water, and there's a lot of debate about, you know, whether or not you need warm water for decals, but since, you know, I normally don't worry about it, I just use room temperature water, whether it's, you know, 65 degrees in here or 85 degrees. But in this case, I am using warm water because that's what they recommend. So being a follow the rules kind of guy for the most part, that's what I'm doing. And it says to dip it in the water for 30 seconds, so I'll leave it in here for just a few seconds and then check it and see if it is loose yet. I'll use a paper towel off camera here to soak up any excess water. Now let's see if this is loose. Yes, it is. Alright, so basically I'm just going to, now normally I use decal solvent, but it doesn't say about anything about using it, so I'm not going to. It says to use it after the decal is dried. So I have it in place. I want to make sure I position it correctly, and I'm basically using the ghost outline of the kit supplied molded on foundry symbol as a guide. So let that soak up any excess moisture, press it down into place. It looks like you have a little bit of time to move it around. And it does say that if you you shouldn't get any silvering, but if you do, keep in mind that and this is right off their instructions. Keep in mind that primer and or paint is going to go over top of this. So if there's any silvering, it's going to disappear anyway. So we'll let that dry. I'm going to go ahead and cut the other two, actually 3 decals that go here and here. I'm going to cut those and put those in place and then come back. Okay, so there is everything in place. And as you can see, not only because it's black, but also it's a lot more pronounced than the molded on detail was. So I'm glad I did it, and it looks good. And it'll be kind of cool to see it under paint. But for now, that is that. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add some cast texture to this differential housing here. So the way I normally do that is I use Mr. Surfacer 500. So I'm going to get that mixed up and ready to go, and then I'll show you how I apply it. Alright, so to do my cast texture, I'm using Mr. Surfacer 500. Make sure it's mixed up really well. My custom modified wacky looking brush here. And then just start applying it on the front thusly. Careful not to get it into the bolts or anything like that. And just use a stippling motion. Get it kind of rough. Later, come back with a little bit of lacquer thinner on a clean brush and smooth out any over coarseness. Something like this. Later when I put primer on, I can see if it needs to be smoothed out anymore or anything like that. Okay, after it's had a chance to dry a little bit, take some lacquer thinner on my brush and just kind of smooth out any rough spots. Don't want any protruding weird things going on. Just smooth it out where it needs it. And that looks pretty good. Alright, I'm going to clean my brush. And now with that done, I can actually move on to gluing some more parts on. Alright, so I need to do some sub-assembly things here, like the fenders. C51, C50, and the parts that go with it. So I've already got the one done for the left side of the vehicle. So, cut the parts off for the other side. Just make sure this bottom here is nice and flat because it rests on top of the differential cover. test fit here. Okay. So what I'm going to have to do here, kind of cool. Most manufacturers do this the same way. It's kind of beveled edged for this part to come together, but this one actually has a stop, so it keeps you from pushing it too far. This is just to tack it into place, and then once I get it on there and lined up, then I'll apply some more cement from the inside. This to make it nice and secure. Make sure it's 90 degrees. Let those dry for a bit. Then we need some headlights, and it calls to paint the inside silver and then put the lens, but I always do that like one of the very last things of the kit. So I'll just cut the parts. Actually, I just need to cut off D12. Which is right here. Now, D12. And that goes, actually there's two of them. The other one is right here. Just look for any seam lines that might need to be cleaned up, which fortunately the seam lines are along natural seams on the light. They just fit in there like that. Put a little bit of cement on there to get them lined up properly. Now, you could not use them because they were removable, but like that. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, and then we need the horn, which is C10 and C9. C10 looks like a little horn, and C9 is right there. Yeah, without getting glue all over my fingers. that dry for a minute. Alright, then we need the parts for the travel lock, the gun travel lock, the cover strip that goes around the bow machine gun. So I'm going to cut all that off and get it cleaned up and ready to go, and then we'll move on to the Photo-Etch parts. Alright, so the first thing I think I'll do, I think I'll put the travel lock mounts in place. A little pin that fits right on there like that. So let's do this. Make sure it's flush. Pressed into place. Whoa. Oh man. That, and then let's put a little bit of extra cement around the edges like that. Okay, so there's that. Alright, so I got the travel lock on. I need to put, I think I'm going to do the fenders next. So the trick with those is there's a couple of pins there. Whoops. That light obviously didn't glue into place very well. Well, isn't that something? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this light in properly. I thought I put glue on it. Maybe I didn't. Wow, it's wild. Alright, there we go. Okay. So, the way these work, there's a couple of pins, a couple of holes, and it just fits on there like that. And this part right here rests on top of the doohickey there. So I'm going to use this cement in this case so I can get it in place before I really glue it down well. Hopefully I won't get glue all over the place. Just kind of squish that down on there like that. Then I'll run some glue along the edge there. Maybe super glue, we'll see. Depends on if the now you can see there's some ejector pin marks there, but that's going to be covered by the tracks. That's why I didn't bother cleaning that up. Okay, and then this one goes on this side the same way, just like that. So, another little dab of glue here. Just like that. In place. Whoops. Rats. There we go. That one keeps popping up, so I'm definitely going to have to glue that. That's kind of weird. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I'm going to have to glue that down. So, let me let these dry up for a minute, and then I'll figure out how I'm going to tack those down. I think what I'm going to use is some medium super glue. And using my custom super glue applicator, I'm just going to put a little bit right there, hold it in place. All right, there we go, both sides. All right, so that's done. So now I can put this on, which is a metal ring that had, I think, little snaps in it. So one could mount a cover. I think I'm not sure. I can't remember if it was. Somebody can comment down below if you would, if you know, part of the weatherproofing for, you know, deep water wading, or if it was just for a cover to protect the machine gun, just from general element type things. Just protect them from the elements. But there's a couple of pins, very, very, very shallow pins that fit on in the holes. So let me get that position, and then I'll glue that. That didn't go very well. Oh my goodness. These things are really finicky. The fact that those pins are so small makes it kind of crazy. So let's try it again. Oh my God. Oh my word. Well, this isn't working out very well. So I'm going to do this off camera where it's a little bit easier and I can kind of grip it now. Let's see, maybe I can get it like this. It's just really hard. Yeah, I'm going to do it off camera. I can't do it at this angle. Okay, finally got that glued into place after much weeping and gnashing of teeth. So next, I need to put this horn in place here, and it's got a little pin and it goes on that little flat plate right there. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of this there cement in that hole right there, and then attempt there we go. Oh, that's awesome. All right, so there's that. So now I'm gonna add a little bit more cement, make sure it's firmly cemented in place. I need to give it a little twist because it's not quite. There we go. Now it's pointing the right direction. All right, so I'm going to let that dry a little bit and then take a look at the Photo-Etch stuff. All right, so the next part I have to do is the Photo-Etch parts, which are guards for the lights and the horn. So in this dandy kit, it comes with the Photo-Etch. I don't have to buy any extra, so that's pretty groovy. So what I need to do is cut the parts off. So let's see, let's do the horn part first because it's the most complicated, because there are 3 parts. There is the curved part, and then there's 2 cross pieces that fit in place and end up looking like this right here. So the parts are PE 3, 4, and 8. So 3, which is right here. 4, which is here. And 8, which is here. So what I need to do first, I need to get the burrs off of here from where it was connected to the fret. And the way I do that is using this handy dandy bender here. Put the part eventually. Put the part in here with just the edge sticking out. Like that, so it doesn't get bent while I sand the part. And then I use a file on this. It's pretty fine, and most of the files, all the files I have, can be a little coarse and might catch and bend it. And that's all there is to it. So let me clean these parts up, and then we'll come back. Alright, so I got this cross part glued together, and the next part I need to do is I need to bend this into a curve this way. And the trick is, it needs to be, the curve needs to be this wide once it's bent. So I need to find something, in this case this brush handle, that's a little bit smaller, because once you bend it, it's going to spring back out a little bit, so you want to be able to bend it, allow it to spring back, and have it be the right radius. So I'm going to bend that around there like that. Okay, so that's what we've got right there. So I'm going to bend this back out just a little bit and check that and see how that looks. That right there, my friends, is money. Right on. So, what I need to do now is I need to straighten these legs out to where they're parallel and make sure that they line up with the little markings right there on the, and they do, so we're good. All right, so I need to, now the way it's supposed to look is okay, this part right here is going to stick out a little bit farther than that part. So let's see if we can get it in place here. Whoops. I'm going to flip it over. All right, and here it is completed. And in looking at it on the table here, it's nice and flat. So when I put it in place right here, it will fit like it's supposed to. So I'm going to elevate this so I can, because it might be a little bit easier to install. So let me see if I can get this elevated. Okay, here's what I did. I got it on my Tamiya stand here, propped up, and using my handy dandy homemade super glue applicator, I am putting it in place, and it's working out nicely. So far, so good. Once it gets anchored, at least by one point, it's okay. So all right, there we go. Now it looks kind of grody, that super glue, but once it dries and get primer and paint on there, you won't even notice it. So I'm going to do the exact same thing for the light guards. The only thing is, it's going to be a lot easier because it's just one piece. There's not that weird little cross piece in the middle. So since you've seen how I did that, and this is essentially the same thing, I'm not going to bore you with watching that. So I'm going to install those, and then we can move on to the next step, I believe. One quick note before I continue on with these. As you can see on the instructions, it shows that the Photo-Etch headlight guard needs a certain bend to it. And it's kind of tricky to do that without a pattern. Some kits supply a little block of plastic that you can use for a template. This one doesn't have one. So what I did is I just got the kit light guard and got it roughly in shape. The Photo-Etch one, put it over the top of this and then just squeezed it in place. And the nice thing is, since this is flexible, you can squeeze it beyond that springy point that I was talking about earlier, and you get a nice light guard. So just a little quick tip there if you have trouble getting the proper shape. All right, so I got all those Photo-Etch guards on. So now it's time to move on to step number 11, which is the back deck parts. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut this stuff out and have it ready to go so I can start assembling it because we're running close to an hour here and I want to at least get this part finished. So let me cut those parts off and we'll start assembling. All right, so I'm cutting these parts off and I'm doing these first right here. It tells me 05. 01, which are handles, C16 and C24, which are tools. But it doesn't say which plate to use. And there are two. There is number 7 and number 13. Well, in looking at the illustration, you can see that there's this flat, there's a seam right here covered by like a flat bar or something. And that one would be C7. So if you're building this kit and you run across that, and you notice that there's no number there for it on the instructions, well, that's the one you use. Okay, so I glued this back panel on, and as you can see, I've made a handle for back here because I don't have enough handles because of an earlier decision I made. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do this. So I've already created a handle just like I showed before using this and my handy dandy multi-strand copper wire. Made it, and you can see it's really long. So when you don't really feel like cutting it to an exact length, in a case like this, especially since there's like these where you place the pins of the styrene handles, kit supplied styrene handles, you can drill it all the way through since, you know, you're not going to see inside and it's no big deal. And like that. Then you can simply take your handle and it'll fit like that, and just kind of push it on through, get it to the height you want, and voila, you don't have to worry about it being all wobbly and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, you're good to go. So then all you need to do is just take your glue of choice, and you know, I guess you could put glue in the holes and then put them in, or you can use super glue and use an applicator and put it around the bases there, and pow, you got yourself some handles. So I'll glue those in a minute, but next I need to glue this panel on. And it goes right there like that. So what I'm going to do here is, because I don't want, like in prior steps, I don't want to put, you know, too many extra thin, touch it on there and have it fill that gap. I want that gap kind of left intact. So I'm going to use this glue again, the thicker stuff. And let's see, I will apply it. There. There and there and there. And yes, I am quite shaky because I drank a cup of coffee earlier, and I probably shouldn't have. You should have seen me trying to put those Photo-Etch parts on. That was painful. You would have been just horrified watching me do that. That's why I didn't do it on camera. All right, so we'll let that dry good. While that's drying, I will go ahead and cut out some more of these parts, which includes C32 and 33, which are the tail lights, and there is a difference, so pay attention. And then I'll do these PE, these Photo-Etch light guards, and those are pretty simple, so I'm not going to show bending them all and that stuff. I'll just install them. All right, so I put 33 in. Now I'm going to put 32 in. It's pretty simple. I'm just going to take some of this liquid cement here, drop it down in the channel where the light goes. There'll be enough there that it will not evaporate in this case. And then using my tweezers and hopefully not flying it off into oblivion, put it in place. Make sure it's pressed down. Put a little bit more cement. Make sure it is, oh crimey, make sure it is level. And there we go. So I got those in place. So now all I need to do is bend up the light guards. Here's another notation on stuff like this. There are two sides to Photo-Etch. There is the detail side and then the back side. So for example, I don't know if you can see it here, but there is, you can see that this portion here looks like it is laying on top of this portion here, and this portion is flared out on the ends. Okay, that's the way it is in the real vehicle, so you want to make sure you have that facing up, because the other side is just plain flat and nothing. So that's just something to keep in mind whenever you're using these parts. So I have it bent, I have it put in place, and it just slipped because I moved it trying to get in frame. And then using super glue, and holding it there for a few minutes, it'll end up looking like that one right there. So let's make sure. Ah, very good. There we go. And then I'll put some more super glue on this back part right here. Okay, I need to put a little bit more over on this side. There we go. All right, so there's that. Okay, so that concludes this part, step 11. So next I'm just start cutting out all these parts and have those ready to go. All right, so I've got all these parts cut out, and there are some I just don't know what they are. So if you can tell me down in the comments, that'd be spectacular, because some of this stuff I don't even know what it is. And I just dropped a part there, it went. Whew. That was close. So basically, I got this long rod looking thing here. And I'm thinking, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm thinking it might be a exhaust for an auxiliary generator or something, so you don't have to use the main engine for powering something. I don't know. I'm gonna have to do some researching on that, but it seems reasonable because it's a long pipe looking thing that goes under the fender, underneath this edge of this fender here. Not fender, sponson. And it just it's got a hollow tip on the end like it's an exhaust or something. So I don't know. Too much to think, because I sure don't have a clue. But it does have a locating point there and there. So let's see if I can get this together. And have it stay. That's weird. It's really hard to glue on there, I can tell you that much. Okay, I'm going to let that set up before I try and install it where it goes. So I'll set it aside. So we have this filler cap here. And it goes there. And this is the direction it goes according to the instructions. The lever goes up top. So that might be something good to pay attention to. Excuse me. Alright, so we got that. Now we have the engine doors there. So let's see. Gotta be careful of that. There we go. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to apply my cement. Holy Toledo. Apply my cement on the insides of the doors because I don't want to mess up any external detail. And it won't take much. Like that. Just like that. Stellar. Okay, same thing with this one. Okay, got that. So now we can put these little teeny tiny handles in place. These here. So I'll do that side first. These things are small. Let's try it again. Make sure they're at a 90-degree angle there. Like that. Make sure that's mashed down in place. I'd probably be better off just setting them in place and sticking some glue on there and doing it that way. Yeah, that's probably the best way to do it. Oh, or unless it falls over. Holy Toledo. That's why I don't like videoing too much of this type of thing. Okay. Alright, I'm going to work on these off camera because this is going to take up too much time. And in typical fashion, as soon as I turn the camera off, blink, blink, blink. All three of those went in like no problem. Championship stuff right there. Alright, so that's in place. Now I can put this, glue this weird part in. And it does have locating pins and holes that match. Something like just right there. Bingo. All right. And then just get a little bit of cement. Zoom right down the line. Right down the line. Do do do. Do. Some late 70s music for you. And yes, I do actually remember it. Alright, so now I need E3 and E5, which are cover plates that go on there. They're optional, but I want to use them. So let's see, E3. So we got E here. So we got E3. Because looking at some pictures, they seem to be, you know, used quite a bit. So there's no reason not to use them. Okay, E3, and that goes right there, and that hinge pin right there, or whatever it is, for the baffle in the back should be in the center. And according to the illustration, a little bit of the whole back plate should stick out, so we're good there. So here we go. Just like that. And then I'll glue the other one on. Alright, they're there in place. Very easy. Just make sure you keep D4 and D7 because the handles are supposed to be orientated a certain way. Alright, so those are in place, and that ends step number 12. So step number 13 is to put the running gear on, but I'm not doing that until after I get some paint on and some weathering. So from there, we'll be moving on to something. Where is it? Holy cow. These instructions are just all kinds of wacky orders. Sorry, we'll be moving on to step 14, which is the sand shield mounts, piece of PE in the back. Step 15, which is the back stowage rack, the spare track holders, and mounting all that up. And then from there we move on to working on stuff for the turret. So that's it. That's it for part number 4 of the Asuka M4A376W VVSS late project. So as always, thanks for watching. If you have any hints, tips, suggestions, all that kind of stuff, put them in the comments down below and I'll get back to you. As always, see you all later.